So now what? You've probably asked yourself that question 100 times because for decades you've been doing what you have to. And now you're wondering, have I actually done enough to do what I want to do? Would you like some help? That's why we're here, to take you from I have to wow, I really get to. I'm Brad Johansen with 𝘂𝗶 Wealth Private Capital, and this is Wise Money. Thanks so much for being with us on Wise Money. Brad Johansen with the President, CEO of 𝘂𝗶 Wealth Private Capital, Joe Wilson III. Buddy, how are you?
Amigo.
I want to talk book. For those of you who don't know, and why would you know? Maybe you have a little insider information, and sometimes that's always good. But Joe is working on a book, has been working on a book with nearly 2 decades in the business to decide, you know what? Time for me to become a scholar and pass on all of my things to you. So the book is called, share with us what you're working on.
It's the 5 agreements to be and stay retirement ready. This is just a book of perspective where almost, I'm getting old. 2 years of, 20 years of almost being in this industry.
Let me tell the stories of you being a baby with the stuff that I was going through. We'll get to that. You're not old.
48.
But you have perspective.
I do have perspective. And so I've always wanted to write a book. And so we kind of see the 5 areas where folks that are successful have in place. And then what's amazing to me is I call it the 5 agreements, because if one of these things are missing, it's going to cost the everyday modern retiree some money. And so they all have to come together, and that's why we're focusing on it. I've always wanted to do it, and I figured I wasn't busy enough with our growing team and new offices and expansion into cities. Why not write a book on top of it?
Yeah, I mean, things are changing, and we talk about adjusting all the time, which is what we do, is trying to adjust to make your retirement as good as it can be, better than you thought it might be able to be, and maybe the dream retirement you always thought you could have, and it was just a pipe dream. Well, maybe we realize that. If we go to the 5 agreements, we start with investments.
It's the foundation, right? I mean, think of the accumulation years. You worked your entire life, and what did you do? Every 2 weeks, you put money in and you invested. When you're getting ready to come into the distribution phase, I think we start here because this is an area we see a lot of folks kind of making some errors, if you will. A lot of times they feel that they're diversified. And I think it's important to understand what's true diversification. A lot of times when we say diversification, they're thinking, well, I have large cap, or I have small cap, I have mid cap. Yes, so much in bonds. That is a part of it. But it's deeper than that. It's not just how you're allocated, it's the managers that are managing that money. Do they have a different perspective? What do I mean by that? What's your favorite color?
It changes.
No.
Well, I mean, I grew up as blue.
Well, you're a
I'm
Cubs
probably
fan.
wearing one of my favorite colors now in purple. I'm a blue-purple guy.
Yeah, I'm purple, right? So, I mean, if you and I were going to open a store, a clothing store,
so I'm going to sit on blue then, just for purpose of illustration.
We're going to have a lot of blue and purple,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The challenge is if those aren't the popular colors, because that's our bias, we might not have a good year if Paris comes out and says blue and purple is not popular. What if it's red and orange? Well, we're missing the boat. The same thing comes to asset managers. I don't care what firm they're with. They tend to have a little bit of a bias. It's why you want a different perspective over the money that's in the market, and you have different managers. We talk about that. It's diversification. And then tax diversification. Is all of your money saved in tax-deferred accounts, tax-never accounts, taxed on the gain? That has to be included as well. So we start with the agreements of understanding the investments.
Okay, so if the investments begin everything to end everything, and we're going to get to the ending, but we preach constantly. For a lot of you who have been to our workshops, listen to our radio program, this television show, you're going to hear income engine all the time. This is one of the agreements. Why does income engine become so important?
Why wouldn't it be a primary part? You worked your entire life. Every day, 20, 30, 40 years, you went to work. What were you getting? Income. Why should that be different? Imagine if you were working for those 20, 30 years, and if it was a good week at your company, you got paid. If it was a bad week in your company, you got less. People wouldn't be working that way. Probably not. Why do you need to do that in retirement? When there are opportunities and availability where we can peel off some of that money you've accumulated, say you have one job to do, create steady, reliable income that'll last you to and through your retirement. You have to have retirement income. How do we do it? We set up an income engine. You've saved $1 million, $2 million. Maybe we can set aside $500,000 or 400 or 600, 800,000 that'll provide an income that'll supply your necessities. It'll supply the lifestyle that you want to live in retirement, and you don't have to worry about getting your paycheck. What does that leave? The rest of the money to grow and puts time back on your side. When you retire at 65, what do you not have? Time to handle the volatility. But once you have your income engine set, you can set that aside and let that grow, and that's money you can access 10, 15, 20 years down the later and do whatever you want to do with it.
It's MTG. It's minding the gap.
Mind the gap,
You're going to hear it all the time on what we talk about in minding the gap and creating an income.
You know where I found that idea?
London.
It did. We went to London for Christmas.
I didn't go to London, but yeah.
But you see it, and you Google it. And I mean, it was the reason, it's hysterical to me, because I never understood. I go to the platform, right? As soon as we get off the airport there in Heathrow, we're hopping on the train, and I look down, and it's, it's a firm foundation. And there's this big little scoop out, and the train comes by. And there's all over yellow paint that says, mind the gap. So me, being inquisitive, I started going, where did this come from? 1960s, they started that. People were falling off that firm foundation ledge, getting onto the train, and getting hurt. It kind of hit me. How many times do the modern retirees leave the firm foundation of a workplace, getting onto that retirement train going forward, and they don't mind the income gap? What is it? You got Social Security coming in, pension coming in, that steady income. There's usually a gap from what you're bringing in to really what you need to fulfill those retirement dreams. That's the gap we're talking about. We built a plan around it.
We're talking about the book that Joe is putting out, and it's going to be available to you. We're just kind of giving you a little bit of preview of the
A teaser.
It is a little bit of a teaser.
Did you call that a teaser in the media world back when you did it?
There's always a tease. There's always a tease. You know what? We're going to head to break with a little bit of a tease.
Oh, my.
844-657-1072. The tease is we want to bring you into the office. Why? Because we'd like to educate you. How much is it going to cost? It will cost you absolutely nothing for a retirement readiness review. We're not selling anything except education to try and get you into and through retirement the way you want to. How do you do that? With a map.
Gentlemen, I'm thinking back in the day, the family vacation. Everyone piled in the car. We were all excited. We had the luggage packed. The picnic basket was packed. The minute you got out of the driveway, where's the snacks, right? But one thing was missing. Dad used to stop, or Grandpa used to stop at the gas station and grab a map.
Oh, yes.
And that was how. Really?
Oh, yeah, that was Dad for me. And Dad's been gone now more than 25 years, but I can still remember back on the station wagon that we would all pile in. I'm the last of 6, so everybody would get together, and dog too, and you would go. He would map out where we were going into the next state because he did not want to make a mistake. He wanted to make sure that we had a path. This is what we're trying to do for people with plans that say, I hope I have enough. Well, hope isn't a plan. So if we can help put together a map that takes them into and through retirement, we plan a retirement readiness review to make sure that your map is going to get you to your destination.
When we look at retirement planning, detours will always come up. I mean, it's 25 to 30 years of retirement income. The challenge that folks need to realize is that you need to know exactly how much money you need to bring in every single month so you could stay on that journey of destination. And you have to adjust it for inflation and taxes. Storms, flat tires, things that come up that just aren't expected. But if you can plan for that, it makes that journey so much easier.
And if you've got to change the tire and you've got to change the direction, sometimes you can't do it by yourself. And maybe you need an expert to try and take you to that path that you didn't anticipate before, because we can't always predict when the storms are going to come. I mean, even in just watching that, I can see my dad's office in the basement where he had a huge folder where he had every single map from every single state. You want to talk about how old I am? 𝘃𝗀 is where he would stop. Or
we stopped at 𝘃𝗀's.
Sinclair, do you remember Sinclair with the big dinosaur on?
No, you definitely are older than that.
I'm way older than that, but we had a map to do that. In the time, you knew a lot of the time, even on the map that you had from the Rand McNally, you didn't have the detours planned out. That was just a map to go. So once you'd hit something, you had a detour. We're going to deal with a lot of detours, which takes us into the book. We're talking about Joe's book that is coming out, the 5 agreements that you have to be and stay retirement ready. We've gone through the investments. We've gone through the income engine. We want to get to asset preservation, which takes us from that map, because we're going to have detours in our path to retirement.
We hope not, right? We hope not.
But it happens. Of course we don't hope, but hope is not a plan. A plan comes with asset preservation. Why is that so important?
Well, because it's really hard to have a long-standing retirement if you impact with some negative market volatility right before or right after you retire. And all we got to do is look at a little history lesson. Go imagine retiring in 1972 and everything's great. Maybe back then you might have been getting a pension, which would have been nice, but 73 and 74 were horrible back-to-back years. I mean, 2 years of just terrible market volatility. And then we come right back around and we see that at 2000, 2001, 2002, 3 years of
3 straight years.
Horrible, horrible market returns. If you retire at the beginning of that and you're creating your income off of just market money and you see those declines, you're going to have to do 2 things. Either keep taking the money you're taking out and risk longevity risk that you're eating away some of that principal that you're going to need there 20, 30 years down the road, or you're going to have to take a significant pay cut. None of you are going to retire to go live on less. I sure hope not. I don't plan on doing that. So you better have some asset preservation and understand market volatility happens. How do you hedge against that risk? Utilizing sophisticated option strategies and alternative asset classes, but still have the money that's there to grow. You have your income engine. But I think another thing about asset preservation people forget about is the effect of healthcare and how impactful and really detrimental that can be to a retirement plan if it's not planned for. It's what I love what we do here. There are absolute amazing tools that help you offset that cost. And what I also like is their hybrids. If we don't need that for healthcare, we can still use it for income. Here's why it's important. And I know time, but you're going to have to chill on, Mr.
No,
Mr.
I want you to go through some of these numbers, because, and it's important. I mean, obviously, a lot of us are visual learners, but I want you to get some of these numbers in your mind at how impactful it may be in asset preservation.
Because we looked at these, just 2024 numbers right now in our general area. You're talking about assisted living, $4,500 a month. Home health care aid, a little over $5,000 a month. This is where it gets me. A semi-private room. I don't even want to think about working my entire life, having a retirement, having something happen, and then sharing it with a stranger. Right?
While you're sick.
While you're sick. $7,900 a month, and this is the kicker, a private room, over $9,000 a month right now on average. Those are astronomical prices. And when you're looking at the average time in a nursing home, that could be 3.2 years. That is a substantial amount of money if you're not planning for it. That's why we want to talk about the 5 agreements, because if we can allocate some capital now to hedge that risk and still have an option if we don't need it, God willing, for those healthcare situations, and we can use that to take the kids to Europe, my goodness, why not take advantage of that planning?
This kind of talks about the timing, and a lot of you may be do-it-yourselfers. A lot of you may have had an advisor down the road. You've had several that you've tried to work with, and everybody tries to time the market or time the investment.
Well, it's always usually about accumulation, how to get more and more and more. And that's important when you're growing,
when you got
and
time.
You're in the accumulation phase. But you don't have time when you're getting ready to walk across that retirement threshold. It's why things have to be looked at differently and why everything must be in agreement.
Okay, so if we're working on timing and trying to figure all of this out, there's a time right now that comes in the 4th section of your 5 agreements, which ends up being in taxes.
You're going to get me preaching here, aren't you?
We have to preach on taxes because a lot of advisors are not preaching about it. We're not talking about tax prep. We're talking about tax planning. And I know you don't feel like your tax situation is really good right now. Let me tell you, your tax situation is really good right now compared to what it may be.
Yeah, compared to history.
History says
3rd lowest.
This is the 3rd lowest
marginal bracket
that we've seen in history. And you go, well, my taxes suck.
Go back and look, right, 1940s, right? We were in a massive amount of debt. Why? We just were fighting the Germans in Japan, right, in World War II. We took on all this debt. 1950, 1960s, and 1970s. The highest marginal tax bracket never, for 30 years, fell below 70%. We're sitting today at over $35 trillion in debt with the highest marginal tax bracket under 40. And all of us, all the way down from the, oh, I'm not in the highest
But
bracket.
only for a certain period of time.
Well, it expires under current law, December the 31st, 2025. Well, how can that happen? Well, let me put a little history on you. Remember Bush tax cuts, what happened to them? They expired. Congress didn't renew those, and taxes went up. We're looking at that same scenario in the face. In fact, even for the wealthier clients in our area, estate taxes will actually have the ability to, could be capturing more coming down. That bucket of money that you could pass estate tax free is looking to potentially be cut in half or even lower. This is an unbelievable time. You have to pay attention to taxes. Why? When it comes to income, you can only spend after-tax dollars. If you have a statement, go pull it out. And if all of your statement is in what we call qualified money, I have a friend that coined this the 400s, a 401k, 403b, 457. You put money in and got a discount on your taxes for that contribution, and all the growth has been deferred. And now you're getting ready to retire, and you go, look at all this big money I've saved, but it's not all yours. You're probably sitting on a monster debt. In fact, there's a way for you to figure that out. I'm going to put up on the screen. You can take a QR code of this, take a picture of it, fill out some basic information. Go to 𝘧𝗎 Start putting some information in there and look at, wow, here's a potential tax debt I haven't even thought about yet. And here's the great thing. There are things you can do about it right now. And that's what we're talking about tax planning.
Well, in the tax planning that you're sitting on right now, you may not have even addressed it. We say it all the time, it's not what you have, it's what you get to keep. And that's because the government is your partner in all of these plans. And we need to mitigate some of the problems that you may be dealing with for 10, 20, 30 years. Why don't we do it now while we know the rules before the rules change again? That's why we want you to call 844-657-1072. That gets you in for a retirement readiness review. Claim your spot so that we can go through it. Joe just told you, wisetaxbill.com. If you go to that, understand what your numbers are, you're going to want to make the phone call. But why wait? Call now, 844-657-1072 for your complimentary readiness review.
I know we're going to break, but think about this, folks. If you choose not to do this, and that's the power we all have, it is the power of choice. What you're choosing is, I'm just going to let it stay the way it is. And you're gambling and hoping that all of this future growth, that when you go to take that money out, you're gambling that you will be in a lower bracket. A lot of people think, I'm going to retire, I'll be making less money. Yeah, you're probably making less money, but when you look at what Social Security, and look at the changes that have happened recently with Social Security just over the past several years, it used to never be taxed. Reagan actually took 50% of it in '83. Then you have
Clinton in 93.
In 93, and it hasn't been touched since then. This is going to change. There's going to be some changes when it comes to taxability. There's going to be some changes of when you can access it. There's a chance that your income, and as you're starting to take money out of these retirement accounts, starts to stack. You can find yourself, if the brackets move back, in a very similar bracket you've been in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Don't be deceived by this. You've got to understand your tax debt.
Make the phone call now. We got to take a quick break. Be right back after this.
Louis, I want to talk to you a little bit about inherited IRAs. I believe you have a personal story to share.
Yes. My mom had a heart attack at 59.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And this was back in 2015. And so my sister and I both inherited an IRA from her. And at the time, we are able to stretch out the required distributions that we have to take each year for the rest of our lives.
Okay.
One of the biggest changes that's happened in the last 5 or 6 years was with the Secure Act. And when the Secure Act passed, it changed an inherited IRA when going to the next generation from a stretch IRA, being able to take the distributions for the rest of their lives, to a 10-year rule.
Wow.
They have to withdraw all the money by the end of the 10th year after somebody passes. And what that's leading to is just a huge, huge tax time bomb.
Yes.
And the government has their hands in this pie. Is there a strategy? What can I do? Are big questions we get. What can I do to shift this money to where that future growth is no longer taxed? And when it goes to my kids, it's no longer taxed. And we have so many tools in our tool belt to help people navigate that situation.
Louis, I can't think of a better time for people to call in and take advantage of that, because obviously everyone deserves to have their own tax map drawn out for them so they know exactly what the implications of taxes will be, especially with inherited IRAs. And it goes all hand in hand with proper legacy planning.
I love Louis. I love Cynthia. I love Louis. Louis in her office.
What an amazing team member.
And this strikes me because of how much I enjoy now walking into the office. People are always surprised still at this point. That may pass, that I'm in the office when you walk into the office, because this is what we do now. This is trying to create stories that are going to last a lifetime. And Louis may be one of the best ever at it. We talk about young kids. This is a guy who is a wealth of knowledge at his point right now.
Masters in financial planning, just a ball of energy. He's fantastic.
Never unhappy, because this is what he loves to do. And to be able to work with him, let me say this on air, Louis, it's a pleasure and a blessing to be able to work with you in the office, and to Julie and to 𝘃𝐿𝐶.
All of our team members.
And to you and all of our team members, that is going to continually grow as we continue to grow with Omega Wealth Private Capital. It is a great place to work. And I say that because it strikes me as I was going through the airport and spending 16 hours in the airport as we get ready to shoot some of these shows, how many of the people are going, I hate my job right now. It used to be fun. And a lot of you are going into that phase. We're talking about the book that Joe has put together that is coming out soon, which is the 5 agreements that you have to be and stay retirement ready. We've gone through the 4, and I want to get to legacy planning, which kind of Louis talked about with the loss of his mother, and trying to figure out where your money goes. Is it going to where you want it to go?
Well, legislative risk is real, and that has to do a little bit with taxes. And think of this, every 2 years we're voting members of Congress to go to the Hill, and they can change the tax rules whenever they want. This is a real issue. And what we've seen, what is available to Louis there, when his mother passed, he and his sister can take that RMD required minimum distribution from an inherited IRA and stretch it out over their lives. Why is that big? Because Louis is in his mid to late 30s. He's making great income. If he's taking that money out and required to take it over the next 10 years, those are his peak income earning years.
Right.
That's stacking on top of his current income, driving all of his tax base up. But because he can stretch that out over his lifetime, it's way more manageable. Those rules have changed. It's gone. And if you pass, the money goes to your spouse, and maybe you pass together. If that's going on to your kids of the next generation, there are some amazing, challenging rules right now where that money must be distributed out within the first 10 years, many times on peak income earning years of the children that are receiving that. This is an area that I don't think people have realized, that when it comes to legacy planning, doing a few things here and a few things there, structuring up. Do you have a will? Do you have an estate plan that's put together that helps hedge some of this amazing legislative risk? And it's constantly changing. You cannot be one and done when it comes to legacy planning, because legislative risk is real and it changes all the time.
844-657-1072. We always talk about it. We're talking about the book, which really centers on what we preach. You have to have an income engine. Let's show. So what do you need most in retirement? Income. And what are you losing when you stop working? We want to create an income engine that lasts, that takes you into and through your retirement. And maybe you've been working with a broker who is saying, well, let's just stay in the market and risk it. How much are you willing to risk with an income that needs to take you into and through your retirement? Time in the market is your friend. But an income engine that takes you through your retirement until your last breath is what we're looking for. Let's put an income engine together that makes it work for you. Maybe to 10, 20, 30 years in retirement. Call us. Come in. Let's meet. Let's create an income engine that lasts. Joe's book, The 5 Agreements to
be and stay retirement ready.
To be and stay retirement ready.
I think a lot of folks think, well, am I retirement ready? And many folks are. They saved a lot of money and they can retire. If you do the math and you take out inflation, you take out taxes, you might be able to pull this off for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. What I want to look at is, can you stay retired? We all hear the stories of folks that lost money in the 2008-2009 crisis that maybe retired right before that, did everything right, were debt-free, it saved a lot of money. And those 2 years were so impactful that they ended up having to go back to work as a consultant. That is not a good plan. And so how do we hedge that risk? Because here's one thing I promise you. If you're going to be retired 15, 20, 25, 30 years, there's going to be some future bad years that'll happen. We just know that.
Without question.
There will be better years, more good years than bad years. But that doesn't mean we just ignore it and say, well, if I got to take a pay cut, I got to take a pay cut. Are you kidding me? Why do that when we can hedge the risk? And it's about staying retired. Be and stay retirement ready.
I mean, we've talked about this in previous shows where there's 3 phases in people that you've worked with in accumulation and in asset preservation, and now it's distribution. And we talked about it there. Time in the market is fantastic. The time changes as we get ready to do this. And we said it before. Everybody always says, I wish I would have done this sooner. So what are you waiting for? We say that all the time. What are you waiting for? And we hear it from people all the time. I'm waiting because I'm scared. I don't do anything when I'm scared.
Well, because knowledge comes understanding. With understanding becomes the idea of, wow, I can do this. One of the things we do at 𝗍𝗍 Wealth Private Capital is help us understand, number one, what are your values? What do you value in life? What do you want your retirement to be? Besides just what do you value, what is the vision of it? What does retirement look like for you and your family? What have you worked so hard for? Once we understand what your values are and your vision, then we can put those all together to work with the wealth that you've accumulated, not just for today, but for the future. You deserve the retirement of your dreams. You don't deserve to retire and just hope that everything works out. And how does that happen in a negative way? If you don't plan for taxes going up, you don't plan for inflation properly, you don't plan for healthcare situations, but you control this narrative. We say it all the time, control the things that you can control.
And why wouldn't you have goals for a great retirement?
You have to, because you deserve it and you should, and because your neighbors can. You get one shot at this. What I want you to do is pick up the phone, 844-657-1072. These phone lines are open, and we have amazing team members standing by that'll set up a time for you to have a phone call, maybe a Zoom call, or come in and see us in person. Thank you for watching Wise Money. We're going to see you next week. Have a wonderful weekend.
From tax time bombs to Social Security insecurities, strategic investments that help clean up your junk drawer and keep your income engine running smoothly at 𝗍𝗍 Wealth Private Capital. We're fiduciary, independent, holistic wealth advisors, and we're here to turn your have-tos into get-tos. So, would you like your retirement dreams to move from good to great? Give us a call. It's what we do, because we really want to. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope to see you in the office. Until then, I'm Brad Johansson. We'll see you next time on Wise Money.